Welcome to Edinburgh. I had an exciting and inspirational trip with my colleagues to Edinburgh. The trip from Oslo to Edinburgh takes about 1.5 hours. In this video, I want to elaborate on our feelings, expressions, and experiences. While traveling with the exceptional power of a camera and letting people feel what we feel in this travel vlog. The collection of travel quotes is made to inspire and motivate you and others to pack your bags and go exploring. First of all, I'd like to give you an overview of the history of Edinburgh. Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland, a vibrant city full of culture and history with beautiful landscapes. Edinburgh has been an important city for centuries, with a focus on education and art. Today, it is home to 500,000 people and several cultural events, including the Edinburgh Fringe and the Edinburgh Festival. The city has a relaxed but lively vibe, with something new and exciting happening every week. Edinburgh is the perfect gateway city to Scotland and Scottish culture. Here are some of the best things to do in this beautiful, calm, and dynamic city. Let's explore the best things to do in Edinburgh. One of the first places you will visit after arriving in Edinburgh is the historic Falkirk Wheel. 1. The Falkirk Wheel is one of the most popular tourist attractions in this Scottish town. Falkirk Wheel has enjoyed its busiest year since its opening, with more than 500,000 visitors every year. Enjoy the full experience of the Falkirk Wheel during this 60-minute journey as you sail through the sky to join the Union Canal 35 meters above. After smoothly moving along the aqueduct and through the Roughcastle Tunnel to the beginning of the Union Canal, you will then descend to the start point, returning you to our visitor centre. Prices: Adult £14.50. Concession: £12.80. For anyone over 60, holding an access card, a full-time student, or a Falkirk Council taxpayer. Edinburgh Castle is a key component of the city's skyline. The castle is built atop a tall rock, making it visible from many parts of the city. The castle has been used since the 2nd century as its position is a perfect defensive location. For centuries, the castle has been seen as the key to the city, controlling the castle. Meant controlling Edinburgh. The castle has housed important figures in Scottish history, including Mary Queen of Scots and Bonnie Prince Charlie. Visiting Edinburgh Castle means getting an insight into the historical timeline of the castle. On display are the crown jewels of Scotland, as well as the Stone of Destiny, which has been used in the coronation of British monarchs for centuries. Be sure to stick around for the firing of the 1 o'clock gun, which has been fired since 1861 every day except Sundays. Exploring Edinburgh Castle. There are 3 ways tourists can explore the interior of Edinburgh Castle.
going to do the longest stop of our tour, and arguably the most important stop of our tour. Because this story is intrinsic to the story of the castle. Intertwined in the story is the story of the Stone of Destiny. Okay, we're going to be doing the Scottish Wars of Independence, William Wallace, Robert the Bruce type stuff. Okay, fantastic. So we're going to start in the year 1286. That's a long time ago, isn't it? Right, 1286. Scotland and England still very, very separate. They will be for centuries to come. All right. Here in Scotland at the time, your king was Alexander III. We were actually quite friendly with the English at this point, okay? Edward I was King of England. He was also known as Longshanks. He's a lanky guy, all right? Yeah, so here in Scotland, Alexander III, his wife has just died. And his 2 kids have just died. The man is heartbroken. But more than that, there might be a succession crisis here in Scotland. And succession crises lead to bloodshed. The king knows this. Being the responsible king that he is, Alexander III gets himself a new wife. She lives in Fife. It's the arsehole of the world. In a place called Kingshorn. Kingshorn is a cliffy place, and the name of that place is going to be funny to about 2 of you later on. Okay. So yeah, she's living in Kingshorn. He's living over here in Edinburgh. And one night, stormy night, well, he wants to see his wife. He's had a few beers, he wants to see his wife, okay? People tell him, no, not tonight, go tomorrow, but he wants to see his wife, and he's the king. So the king got on his horse and he rode to Kingshorn. Falls off a cliff, dies, right? Don't worry, the horse is okay, right? The result was a succession crisis, right? Exactly what he's trying to avoid. We have 12 main contenders for the throne here in Scotland. 12! What is the solution over here? Yeah, we're gonna kill each other, okay? No, instead we make a wise decision. We decide to get a referee to come and choose which is best of us to be King of Scotland, all right? And it sounds like a bad idea, and it was a bad idea in hindsight, but at the time it made sense. We chose the King of England, Edward I, to be our referee. We were allied with him. He was friends with us. We wanted him to be happy with the choice. He was also pretty good at being king, that guy, okay? He knew what was needed. Did Edward choose the strongest contender? Bruce? No, he chose the weakest contender, John Balliol, who's now crowned King of Scotland with English support, crowned by Edward. Edward is a man of symbolism, and so he crowned Balliol himself, who was crowned on a knee in front of Edward. This is more than symbolic. We become a puppet, vassal state of the English. The English are at war with the French. Edward is trying to protect his lands of Normandy that he still owns. Okay, a little bit of your history coming in, actually. And they're very profitable lands for him. He keeps on asking for Scottish soldiers to defend these lands. We don't like that. But then he asked for Scottish money, and we really didn't like that. 10 years of this. The Scottish go to the French, and they sign in 1296 what is today the oldest active agreement in Europe. It's called the Old Alliance between Scotland and France, right? Edward hears about this allegiance between his enemy and his would-be puppet state, and he is furious. He abandons his lands in Normandy, never to regain them. He came back here to Scotland and he said, years ago, you asked me who should be king. I said, this guy over here, you know what, I was wrong. You know who should be king of Scotland? Me! There's my army to prove it, right? He took Edinburgh Castle by force with a trebuchet. He's one of the few people in history to take this place by force. It's the most besieged castle in the UK. 26 separate besieges it's had. All right, so only a few times taken by force. Edward was one of the few of them. Not only that, Edward went castle to castle, gave the Scottish a beating. The man was a military genius. He's arguably the greatest of his time. He gained his nickname, the Hammer of the Scots. Edward took 2 very important things from this country. He took the crown jewels, but more importantly, Edward took the Stone of Destiny. More on this later. Scottish unite, first under William Wallace, who starts off fantastically. You'll never take away Wallace's Battle of Stirling Bridge victory in 1297. His badly armoured peasant infantry, outnumbered, somehow managed to defeat the English professional army, including their notorious heavy horse. Then when the English are retreating, Stirling Bridge collapses, half the English trapped against the curve in the river and slaughtered, right? Wallace played a huge role in the battle himself. He was a big guy, about 6'8", right, 6'7", so over 2 meters, and that's big today. But 700 years ago, a tall man was 5'4". 700 years ago, William Wallace wasn't a big man. He was a monster. That man would have towered over a battlefield. It's incredible he didn't take an arrow, to be honest. This victory put him on the map. He is known as the defender of Scotland. Still is. That's why he's always depicted holding a shield. Okay. Nobles united underneath him. His army grew pretty large and fast, but Edward stepped in personally. And Wallace was no match of a tactician. He lost most of his armed conflicts, his men dying like flies. Wallace didn't know what to do. His nobles hated him. But he was such a hero of the people, it was hard to be rid of him. It took them 8 years. Eventually, in 1305, Wallace, betrayed by his nobles, captured not far out of Glasgow. He was brought down to London, and it was down south in England that William Wallace did the single most important thing that man would ever do. And it is, he died. That's the most important thing Wallace did, right? He was found guilty of high treason, and he was sentenced to be hung, drawn, disemboweled, and quartered. It's not a good way to go, right? You can say what you want about the English, and I do, but you can't say they're not creative, right? First they hang the man by his neck, but they don't let him die, they wanted him alive. They stretched him on a board, took a glowing red-hot knife, and they slowly cut his belly open top to bottom. The heat seals the veins, they want him alive. They took his intestines out of him, and they set them on fire in front of him. He watched them burn, it smelled like haggis. He's still alive, and then they quarter him, right? They got 4 horses, 4 ropes, and 4 limbs. The horses ran apart and Wallace was ripped apart, just to make sure they removed his manhood and his head. Then they took his limbs, spread them, displayed in city centres across the borderlands of England and Scotland, a warning. That's what happens if you mess with the English. His head on a spike at Tower Bridge in London, a great triumph. Look, we've captured that rebel, William Wallace. So he's dead, in case you're wondering. Okay. And the English have tried to make a warning. They failed. They made a martyr instead. What a fantastic martyr Wallace made. Now, if you further, the Scottish united under a new man, the real Braveheart in history, in fact, a man by the name of Robert the Bruce. Right? He got that nickname post-death. They took his heart onto the Crusades in a box. Right? It was thrown at Alhambra. Upon their defeat. Now it's buried next to him in Melrose Abbey. Okay. Robert the Bruce's Braveheart, whose grandfather was an original contender for the throne, a very successful hit-and-run guerrilla tactician he was, right? A warrior king. In 1307, Edward I dies. He's an old man. His son, Edward II, is crowned King of England instead, and Edward II very quickly proves himself to be nowhere near the same man as his father, right? Things start to turn. We're going to jump to the year 1314 now. For the first time, Robert the Bruce starts to believe something he's never believed before. He might win. And so, what was a great military tool in the form of his nephew, Thomas Randolph, all of a sudden started to look like a political opponent. And the Bruce decided to be rid of his nephew. You see, Thomas Randolph acted with a small band of 30 men. These are elite soldiers. More than us, just more than us. Whenever there's some impossible mission to be done, the Bruce would ask Randolph to do it. They never failed. These 30 men would follow Randolph to the ends of the earth. In fact, you know what? Much of the larger army would too. And that was the problem. So the Bruce went to his nephew and gave him a suicide mission. He said, you're going to take your 30 men and you're going to take Edinburgh Castle for me. This castle was held by the English at that point, 300 English soldiers defending the area. Thomas Randolph has no choice. He has to follow orders. Him and his 30 men, they arrive here in Edinburgh. Nobody knows that they're here. They're all about to die, and they know it, so what do? Pub. They went to the pub. Had their last whiskies on earth. The story goes that in a pub in Edinburgh, they met a sympathizer of the Bruce's cause, a man whose father used to be the governor of Edinburgh Castle, a man who used to play around the rocks as a child. He knew them well, and he, like Gollum, said, there's another way. And he told him of a secret way to climb, we think, the north face of Castle Rock over there. They had their plan. They gathered together in the dead of night and they started to clamber up the wet rock face over there. This is Thomas Randolph's raid, depicted right over here. Okay, you guys see that? They jumped over these walls, weapons bared, they were ready for anything. But no one was here to meet them. Nobody knew that there was an army in the city, let alone they could scale the walls of the castle. So, in silence, they went to the nearest English barracks. It used to be over there. That is now a cafe. It's aptly named the Redcoat Cafe. And they started to slaughter English soldiers in their sleep. The lucky ones woke up to the gargled, bloody screams of their friends and shit and vomit and chaos. And they said, Robert the Bruce is here inside the castle with his army. Run. And they fled. This castle was captured by these 30 men. That is Thomas Randolph's raid. They couldn't hold this area. You need at least 200 men to defend Edinburgh Castle historically. The Bruce knew it, so he sent down his orders. He said, I can't have Edinburgh Castle, can I? Nobody can. Burnt it from the inside out. Nothing, not a stone, survived Robert the Bruce's destruction, besides St. Margaret's Chapel. It was deemed too holy to destroy. Okay, he was in trouble with the Pope already. Nothing predates 1314 besides the chapel. The man who in history created the most damage to this castle is now glorified with his statue at the front of it. Okay, that's Robert the Bruce. And that's true with many castles around Scotland. It was time for the Bruce to make his move. He gathered together the largest army he ever had, 10,000 professional, veteran Scottish soldiers. Okay, we've got another guide coming in. We're going to get a little closer so not too loud. Okay. And he besieged Stirling Castle, right? Stirling Castle was the key. It's just to the north of us. It connects the Highlands and Lowlands of Scotland, right? He didn't want to attack it. He didn't want to lose his men. So he allowed the defenders of Stirling Castle to send a message down to the English that read, if you don't relieve us by X date, we will surrender, right? The Bruce and his 10,000 men were ready for anything that the English might throw him. Well, except for the 15,000 professional veteran English soldiers he saw marching on him, the largest force that had ever been sent to Scotland, right? Heavy marshland behind him, Robert the Bruce was forced to engage, outnumbered 3-2 into the Battle of Bannockburn. Had he lost the Battle of Bannockburn, we might talk about Scotland in the same way that we talk about the Kingdom of Northumbria, or Wessex, or Wales, with no fire in our hearts. No, he won the Battle of Bannockburn. You see, Edward II was in charge of the English, nowhere near the same as his father. Heavy casualties on both sides. By winning the battle, he easily took Stirling Castle, burnt it to the ground, statue out the front. Right? He had reconquered Scotland for the Scottish people. He went on to write and sign in 1320 what was in essence a fancy letter to the Pope. It was called the Declaration of Arbroath, signed in a church, Arbroath Abbey. For the Americans, you can think of it as a Declaration of Independence, right? Let me correct myself. For the Americans, you can think of the Declaration of Independence as a version of it, because it is, right? Super. It was a fancy letter to the Pope. In it, the Scottish asked the Pope to recognize Scotland as an independent nation once again. The Pope did. He was the only authority on these things at the time in Europe. We asked the Pope to order the English to return the crown jewels and the Stone of Destiny, which the Pope did. More on this later. In this declaration, it also stated that so long as but 100 of us live, never again will we come under English rule. Oops. Worked out better for you guys, huh? There are your wars of independence in a nutshell. William Wallace, Robert the Bruce. I intertwined in the story of the Stone of Destiny. We'll do that a little bit later on. Okay, fantastic. It's probably the most defining moment in Scottish history. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, guys, we're gonna go around this group, kind of turn around as a group. We're gonna talk about cannons and views, right?
But the thing is, it used to happen as much, if not more, before, and nobody would report it.
Castle, one o'clock gun, and one snake. Not both, 1 o'clock gun for now. But before we do that, we get a lovely opportunity to talk about our views. This is a game. Stay with me for a while, okay? Fantastic, it's a game.
Augustine said, "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." This quote suggests that each and every one of us should travel and see the outside world rather than just ours. To have a different perspective and discover things you have never seen before. Augustine's thought brought me to the end of one of the pages of my life. We'll see you soon in the upcoming videos. Take care, bye.